Today's call is going to be something kind of like the opposite of what I would normally touch on in a certain subject. So, I'm a big believer in when you are starting a weight loss journey, you have to get comfortable failing, right? I talk about this often. You have to get comfortable failing. You have to accept that it's going to happen. You have to realize that being successful this time around isn't about decreasing failure. It's about getting through the failure faster, right? Fail faster is something we say a lot in this community. Now, when you are starting out, it is super important that you understand this, because generally when you're starting out, you're really hard on yourself, right? Do you remember how you kind of were in the beginning, or maybe where you still are right now? You get really hard on yourself. You beat yourself up a lot. And unfortunately, beating yourself up does the opposite what you think it does, right? Beating yourself up makes you feel even worse for the failure. And so now you're prolonging the failure because you're in a negative loop, and it's gonna take longer to get out of that loop. So when you're starting your journey, one of the biggest tasks when it comes to weight loss is learning not to beat yourself up for failures. Now, this call is about the opposite of that. So this is for the person who's been on this journey a while. And this is coming from a place of personal experience right now, because I'm noticing a trend. I'm noticing a pattern that I've developed, and it is actually the opposite of what helped me in the beginning. And so I think somebody who's been on this journey for a while, and maybe they're in a slump or in a rut or feeling a little off, I think you're actually not being hard enough on yourself. Now, bear with me. When I am in a slump, so either I'm not performing at the level I want, or I know I'm falling short, what I'm noticing that I do is I start to underplay my failures. I start to underplay my failures and my slip-ups and my shortcomings. I get comfortable falling short of what I said I would do, or think I'm capable of doing, or would want to do. And the reason for that is because of what I had to do in the beginning, right? If you go back, however far ago, especially into the beginning of my journey, I was so cruel to myself. Is anybody else there? Just so cruel to yourself, like unnecessarily cruel and disrespectful things you'd say to yourself and do to your body that you'd never do to a loved one, you'd never do to a friend. And so I was kind of so extreme on the one spectrum. In order to get out of that, I had to go to the other extreme and love myself and respect myself and honor myself and give myself grace to mess up. So I had to swing really far from one side all the way to the other side to get me to where I am, to get me to lose the weight. And the funny thing is, ladies, usually what gets you from point A to B is usually the thing that will stop you from getting from point B to C. Think about that. The things that get you from A to B are usually the things that will stop you from getting from B to C. And in my case, regarding failures, that is the pattern that I've noticed that I have. Because I went so far and loved myself and gave myself the grace to fail, to screw up a little bit, I'm now comfortable failing. I'm now pretty comfortable in most aspects failing. Oh, I messed up, keep going. Get up, keep going. Get up, keep going. But because I've become comfortable with failing, it doesn't hold the weight and the lesson that it used to. And so I underplay the failures. I get comfortable with the shortcomings that I'm doing. And then because I'm okay failing, I'm not recognizing that these failures are potentially more damaging than I'm understanding. So this is a real problem, because failure tends to be the biggest thing that drives us in the beginning. And then when we get into our journey, it seems to be the thing that keeps us stuck, because of how we viewed them. Because we're now not able to tap into pain. We're now not able to identify problems or label those problems as severe as they are, right? Because when it comes to weight loss, everything is life or death. And I know that sounds super dramatic, but you have to view it that way. It is life or death, whether it's actual physical death from being unhealthy or just mental death from letting yourself down and wasting away your potential. When it comes to your health and your weight loss, every decision, no matter how big, how small, every action you make, every thought that occurs needs to be viewed as life or death. That is how important this is. And we forget that. And that's okay. That's part of the ups and downs and the ebbs and the flows and the ins and the outs of learning and becoming this new person. And so when you swing so far to where you finally okay screwing up, it doesn't throw you off mentally completely. You can jump back on fairly quickly. We have to be careful that we are still acknowledging the level of these failures. We have to still acknowledge how damaging these things can be if we don't stay on our toes. Otherwise, we get comfortable continuing to fall short because we tell ourselves, oh, it happened again. Oh, not a big deal. I'll just get back on track, which is a great mindset starting out. That is how we finally get back on track after, years and years of repeating the cycle of failing and then stopping. But if you want to get to the elite level, you have to switch the flip back on, find that center position of, okay, now I'm being too kind. Now I'm being kind of frou-frou and not very honest. And I'm robbing myself of the opportunity to learn because I'm not thinking there's problems, or I'm not reflecting and analyzing as much because I'm so comfortable with the feeling of failure now. And I've overcome it so many times, I'm not viewing it as detrimental as it can be. But let me tell you, when you start to get, let's say, comfortable, or when you start to feel like you are immune to totally falling off, to totally screwing up, to totally going backwards, when we start to get cocky in that sense, that's kind of the biggest failure. That's the truest failure. Because at the end of the day, it's only you versus you. You wake up with you, you go to bed with you. It is only you versus you on this journey. You can't do it for anybody else. You can't continue for anybody else. And nobody else can get your ass off the couch to do a workout or meal prep. It's you versus you. So ask yourself, me now versus me last month. If we went head to head, who would win? Me now versus me last year, this time. If we went head to head, who would win? Is there a point in your time where that you would have beat that current you now? And if that's true, there's standards that are not being set, standards that you've set too low, standards that you've got comfortable dropping. And there's a great quote. It says, some people set the bar so low that they trip over it. Some people set the bar so low that they trip over it. Are you tripping over that low bar of standards that you've let drop down because the pains of our failures aren't as intense anymore? Because we've built up this confidence, because we have some wins under our belts. As our confidence went up, have our standards dropped down? Are we kicking ourselves? Are we the reason we're stuck? Because we're not hard on ourselves. We are not tough on ourselves. We are not holding ourselves to even higher expectations than you think you should. Because being tough on yourself is the probably one of the highest forms of being honest with yourself. Because you're telling yourself there's more to accomplish. You can do more. You can be more. Why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you being more? Why? Why? Do you know why? Have you thought about why? Where along the line did you get comfortable staying comfortable? Did you get comfortable stopping halfway to your goal, stopping halfway to your potential? Why? What are you telling yourself to keep you in this little slump, in this little rump? So I would challenge you. I would challenge you, if you are somebody who's been on a journey for a while, or you've struggled to get back on track, or you are on and off. If you are in this slump, I challenge you, maybe you are not being hard enough on yourself. Maybe by being harder on yourself, you can reveal some more truths. You can be more brutally honest, like honestly honest. When you set really, really, really high standards, the gap between where you are and who you want to be becomes bigger. And sometimes we need that overwhelming reminder of how far away we are. Or we need that overwhelming reminder of how much work needs to get done still in order to light a fire under our ass once we've been on this journey for a while. And this is so interesting to talk about because this is so not what needs to happen when you start, right? At the beginning, just look at your first little goal. Don't look at how far you got to go because that's overwhelming. It'll make you not do anything. But there comes a point where that switches along your journey, where you've reached a point where you never thought you would reach before, and you take your foot off the gas. And this has happened, and you know that this has happened if you've ever lost a large amount of weight before and then gained it all back, or gained some of it back. And at that point, it would have been time to switch over. Time to switch to that perspective shift. I need to be more hyper aware of my failures. I need not to underplay them. I need to be very aware of my shortcomings. It is me versus me. Am I as strong as I was last month? No, not acceptable. Build that gap. Build that gap of the high standards of what you think you should or deserve or can be. So that way you can get a more realistic, honest view of where you still are. Because pain is one of the greatest motivators, more so than pleasure. People who are the most successful in weight loss do so because they hate being overweight, not because they love the idea of being skinny. Think about that. The women who I've trained and coached who are the most successful, they started because they hated staying the way that they were, not because they were super excited about getting somewhere. They were just in so much pain where they were right now. So use that. That goes away once you're in your journey. It does, which is a good thing because you were so unhappy. It was your rock bottom that motivated you to get your butt in gear in the first place. But the farther we get away from that rock bottom, the less and less intense the pain to keep going is, the less powerful the push to keep going is. And you know this once you hit those plateaus, right? It's just the motivation's not as intense anymore. And so we're not going to make actions as quickly or as strongly or strong-willed. And so I challenge you, if you feel like this is resonating with you in terms of you've been on this journey, you want to take it to the next level, I'd say raise your standards. Create a bigger gap from where you want to be and who you are right now so you can recreate that pain of needing this, of this being life or death, of being able to recognize a slip up for what it is, not worse, not better, for what it is, and still learn from it, not just sweep it under the rug and move forward. That works in the beginning. It doesn't work in the middle or closer to your goal, or when you reach your goal and you have to think of a brand new one that you never thought of before. Tap into the pain. Tap into the pain. Tap into the high expectations, right? Set standards for yourself. I know you have high ones already. Fit Queens do. If you're listening to this, you got high standards of yourself. You showed up to a mindset call. You're pretty damn unique. Go further. Go further, go higher, go longer, go faster, go stronger. Lift it up. You are tripping over your own low bar right now, or you will soon. Don't be afraid to set the bar so high you miss. Even if you miss, it's still higher than the highest bar right now. And that's what we're striving for. We're striving for the highest point. That's why you're still showing up. That's why you're still listening. That's why you're still working. You want that highest point. You have an idea of what that highest point is, but yet we're still not there. What if we raise that highest point so much that by sucking, you reached your old highest point? How nuts is that? Think about that perspective shift. Maybe you need a new high in order to make the current high more attainable. Create that gap. Let some pain back in. Let some discomfort in. Acknowledge that, yes, you love yourself. You are worthy. You deserve this. You're allowed to slip up and it's going to happen. But also realize and let your brain wander and go in that dark place of, if I don't reach that me, regardless of how far I've come, if I still don't reach that next step, I'm dead. I am dying. If I'm not growing, I'm dying. Let your mind go there. Don't stop it from going there. That could be one of the biggest pushers in your entire life. And I don't want you to miss out on that source of motivation, because then we stop using failures properly. And if we don't use failures properly, how on earth are we ever going to learn or know where our flaws are? They show up when we mess up. It's like they're highlighted when we fail. And I want you to have that feeling. So, thank you for listening, ladies. It's a very interesting perspective. It is kind of the opposite of a lot of the things that I preach. So I would really urge you to sit with it, rewatch it if you need to, sit with it, and see kind of where in your life do you need to be harder on yourself, or where in your life have you been letting yourself slack when you know you shouldn't, and you know the answer is to simply do better, set higher standards. And if we raise that one step, you will do better.